There's a reason you found this message, Scorpio, and it's not a coincidence. You see, the universe has a strange way of whispering truth through chaos, and right now, something deep within your spirit has stirred. Maybe you felt it in your chest, a tightness you couldn't explain. Maybe you've been having vivid dreams, sudden flashes of memories, or even hearing someone's name echo in your mind out of nowhere. You were about to walk away. Maybe you already did. Maybe you told yourself, it's over, I've healed, I've closed that door. But what if I told you that soul never left you? What if this wasn't just a chapter you lived through, but a soul contract written across lifetimes, waiting for a specific moment to be reawakened? Scorpio, you don't love lightly, and when you walk away, you don't look back. Unless something whispers deeper than the mind, deeper than the heart, a signal from the soul itself. And that's what's happening right now. This isn't about a simple reconciliation. This is about divine timing, karmic justice, and a transformation that goes far beyond romance. This is about the part of you that's been preparing in silence, while someone else somewhere has also been waking up to who you truly were in their story all along. The person who ghosted you, the one who hesitated, the one who wasn't ready, they were never supposed to stay gone. They were supposed to grow. But before this reconnection can unfold, the truth must come to the surface. Because it's not just a person returning. It's your energy calling back what was once stolen, your voice, your power, your place in the divine order. And for some of you, this reconnection will bring with it a truth so raw, so unfiltered, that it will change how you view your past forever. Scorpio, this message is not for the faint of heart. It's for the soul that's walked through hell and still kept its grace. It's for the one who has cried behind closed doors but never gave up on love. It's for the one who lost themselves and finally reclaimed their fire. If that's you, then stay with me. Because what's coming next isn't just a twist in your story, it's a soul awakening. And this time, you won't walk away. Not from your destiny, not from yourself. Part 1, the unseen hand that held you back. Scorpio, let's go back for a moment, not to reopen old wounds, but to finally see them in the right light. Because there was a time when you thought things were about to begin. You gave your heart or your energy or even your dreams to someone, and it felt like you were on the edge of something huge. A beginning, a partnership, a destiny. But then nothing, they didn't follow through. They hesitated, they disappeared, or worse, they stayed but gave you only half of what you truly deserved. And for a while you thought it was about you, that maybe you misread the signals. That maybe you were too intense, too much, too raw, but that was never the truth. The truth is someone behind the scenes, whether in this realm or a spiritual one, didn't want that connection to unfold yet, not because you weren't ready, but because they were. Scorpio, your soul vibrates at a frequency that many can't handle without first facing themselves. You're not just someone people date. You're someone who shows up like a mirror that reflects everything someone isn't ready to confront. Their wounds, their fears, their insecurities, that's why they pulled away. Not because you were wrong, but because your presence revealed the truth. What you didn't know was that during that silence, the universe was working on them. They had to lose you in order to hear what your absence screamed louder than your presence ever could. There was spiritual interference here too. Someone close to you, or close to them, didn't want this connection to grow. It could have been jealousy, control, fear, or even karmic debts from past lives still entangled in the present. But the result was the same: a delay, a fog, a silence you didn't deserve, and yet you grew anyway. That's the thing about you, Scorpio. You don't crumble when things fall apart, you rebuild. Quietly, privately, you alchemize pain into power without making a sound. And while they were lost in confusion or surrounded by manipulation, you were becoming someone they'd never forget. The person who once hesitated, They're beginning to realize the absence of your energy is the loudest sound they've ever heard. The karmic wheel is turning now, and suddenly they're the ones seeing signs, feeling the pull. Hearing your name in conversations you're not even part of. Dreaming of you, wondering if it's too late. But here's what they don't know yet: you didn't just survive the heartbreak, you transformed through it. You used every moment of rejection, abandonment, and silence to build an inner world so powerful, so untouchable, that even if they came back now, they'd be meeting a completely different version of you. And that's what's terrifying them. Because now they're not sure you'll take them back. They're not sure they're worthy anymore. But this story isn't just about someone realizing your worth. It's about the hidden hand that tried to block your path, and how that force is now losing power. You were meant to go through this pause, not because you were wrong, but because the universe needed to make things right. And now that it has, the question isn't will they return? It's will you still want what you once waited for? Because the version of you that's rising now, the one forged in silence, pressure, and emotional fire, doesn't chase, you attract. And what's meant for you always finds its way back. Life lesson from part 1. Sometimes the universe doesn't delay your blessings. It delays the people attached to them because they haven't earned access to who you're becoming. Part 2, the person who needed to lose you to find themselves. There's a strange thing that happens, Scorpio, when someone loses a soul like yours. At first, they don't feel the full weight of it. They think they've made a logical choice or followed the advice of someone else. Maybe they told themselves they needed time, freedom, control. Maybe they even convinced themselves you were too much. But time has a way of unmasking truth. And now that person, yes, the one you gave your trust to, the one you showed your scars to, the one you allowed to witness the parts of you no one else has ever seen, they are waking up. And the awakening is harsh. You see, Scorpio doesn't just walk into someone's life and leave things the same. You alter energy, you leave fingerprints on the soul, you imprint without trying. Because your love is not about surface, it's cellular. It changes people at the deepest levels, even if they don't realize it until you're gone. This person, they're not sleeping well, they're not functioning the same way. They're not feeling that control they once thought they had, because they didn't just lose someone attractive, interesting, or loyal. They lost an anchor, a mirror, a storm, and a sanctuary all in one. And what's worse, they didn't even understand what they were losing while they had you. It took the silence, the void, for them to finally hear the truth of who you were. Not just a partner, a teacher, a soul contract, a spiritual ignition. They're beginning to replay every word you said, every moment they dismissed, every instinct they ignored. They're recognizing the red flags in themselves. And it hurts, but this pain is necessary because the version of them you once met. They couldn't have handled the magnitude of you. You're a storm disguised as still water, Scorpio. And that kind of energy doesn't pair with someone who's still hiding from themselves. They needed to grow. And they are, quietly, slowly. But it's happening. They've been thinking about reaching out, writing that message, making that call, walking through the door they once closed. But here's the twist. This time you hold the power. You're not waiting anymore. You're not checking your phone. You're not begging the universe for a sign, because you've already become the sign. You've become the reminder that what's real doesn't fade, and what fades was never real. And while they're over there wondering if you still think about them, you're out here wondering if your soul has outgrown what once felt like destiny. But Scorpio, let me tell you this. Some people don't realize their lesson until the final exam is over. And some soul contracts were never meant to break, only to bend. This isn't just about romantic closure. It's about karmic clarity. And right now, they are learning the cost of not choosing someone who would have rebuilt an entire kingdom with them, even from ashes. The question is no longer, are they coming back? It's, are they coming back whole or still hollow? Because you won't accept fragments anymore. You won't hold space for someone who hasn't learned how to hold themselves. This is your evolution. And if they want to walk with you in this next chapter, they better show up ready to walk barefoot through the fire like you did. Life lesson from part 2. Losing a Scorpio doesn't just create distance, it creates awakening. But not every awakened soul is ready for the light they ran from. Part 3. When divine timing disrupts human desire. Scorpio, let's talk about something most people misunderstand: timing. You see, when things didn't work out, when the text didn't come, the door never opened, or the relationship collapsed just as you were ready to bloom, you may have blamed yourself. You may have thought, maybe I moved too fast. Maybe I was too intense, maybe I was the problem. But the truth is, you weren't wrong. You were just early, and divine timing is never early, it is only perfect. Scorpios are ruled by Pluto, the planet of transformation, death, and rebirth. Nothing about your path is linear. Nothing about your life moves on society's schedule. While others are planting seeds in spring, you're growing wild in winter. While they rush forward, you stand still, sensing what can't yet be seen. And that stillness, Scorpio, that pause you hate. It was never punishment, it was alignment. You were ready, but the other pieces weren't. The person you loved, they still feared themselves. The opportunity you wanted. It still wasn't clean enough for your energy. The chapter you tried to begin, it still held unfinished pages from the past. So the divine paused you. Because the truth is, Scorpio, your energy doesn't fit just anywhere, it's sacred. It's rare, it's alchemical, and the universe will not allow it to be wasted on half-hearted hearts or hollow opportunities. Even when your ego begs for movement, your soul knows that waiting is sometimes the most radical act of power. The season you're in now, the one where everything feels like it's finally shifting, this is the one you were always meant to arrive in, but only as this version of you, not the one who doubted themselves, not the one who begged to be seen, but the one who stood through storm after storm and now walks like thunder itself. You no longer chase divine timing, you walk parallel to it, and that person you once waited for, they're starting to feel the pressure too. Because the universe doesn't just align blessings for you, it activates the ones tied to your contract. And now they're feeling the call not because you reminded them, but because your absence activated their soul's memory. They're remembering something they can't explain, a pull they can't ignore, a feeling that something important is slipping away, and that feeling is you. But here's the twist, you're no longer waiting at the same place they left you, you've ascended. So now, if they want to reach you, they have to rise to the level of your rebirth. That's what divine timing really does. It doesn't just prepare your blessings, it prepares you to only receive what no longer carries chaos. And when the two of you finally align, if that's still meant, it won't be under old rules, it will be under new vows written not from ego but from soul. Life lesson from part 3. Just because you're ready doesn't mean it's time. Divine timing honors who you're becoming, not who you once were. Part 4. Someone is watching you, and they're feeling every move you make. Scorpio, you may think no one sees you right now. You've been quiet, focused, deliberate. You haven't been posting much. You've pulled your energy inward. You've stopped explaining your absence, stopped defending your peace, and most importantly, stopped waiting for anyone to validate your process. But here's what you don't know. Someone is watching, and they feel you every single day. They may not have spoken up, they may not have reached out, but that doesn't mean they've let go. In fact, the quieter you've become, the louder your presence has become in their world. Because Scorpio doesn't have to be loud to be felt. You move like gravity, unseen but undeniable, and that person, they can't shake the memory of you. They could be a past connection, a former lover, a colleague, a friend who ghosted you without explanation. Or even someone new, someone who's just now coming into your orbit, silently drawn to your frequency, unsure why they can't stop thinking about you. They see how you carry yourself now, grounded, unbothered, self-contained. And it intimidates them in the best way. Because in a world where everyone's screaming for attention, your stillness speaks louder than noise. Your silence doesn't mean absence, it means sovereignty. And whether you realize it or not, you've become the mirror for someone else's awakening. They're noticing things they didn't see before, the way you hold boundaries, the way you don't explain your moves, the way your energy doesn't chase but attracts. They're watching from the shadows, wondering, have I missed my chance? Were they always this powerful and I just didn't see it? Scorpio, this is what makes you different. You don't perform, you don't beg, you don't try to prove. You simply become, and those who are meant for you feel the shift. This person may be afraid to approach, afraid that they don't measure up anymore, afraid of what your eyes might say if they look directly into them now, because your eyes don't lie and your spirit doesn't sugarcoat. But what draws them in isn't your softness, it's your evolution. They feel like they're standing outside a temple they once mocked, now desperate to enter, only to realize the doors are locked unless they've done the inner work too, so they wait. So they watch and they wonder, do I still have a place in their world? But Scorpio, you've stopped waiting for them to find the answer, because you've already chosen your direction. And if they want to be part of your story now, they'll have to step out of the shadows, not with words, but with presence. Not with promises, but with proof. Because you're no longer the version of yourself they once knew. You're the version you were always meant to become. And your energy, it's no longer just powerful, it's sacred. Life lesson from part 4. Sometimes your silence activates someone's awakening more than your words ever could. Let them watch. Your presence teaches without performance. Part 5. The shadow that tried to block you is now powerless. Scorpio, while you've been transforming in silence, someone else has been clenching their fists behind closed doors. They see you rising, they see you glowing, and they can't understand how you survived everything they threw your way. Because here's the truth few will say out loud: someone tried to block you, spiritually, emotionally, energetically. Maybe they didn't do it directly. Maybe it was gossip, subtle manipulation, jealous thoughts, energetic interference disguised as concern. Or maybe they used people close to you, planting seeds of doubt, creating rifts in your connections, trying to dim your light without ever admitting their envy. But now it's unraveling, because the more they tried to entangle your path, the clearer your path became. Scorpio, when someone tries to sabotage a soul like yours, it never ends well for them. Why? Because you were never built on illusions. Your foundation was forged through betrayal, through pain, through death and rebirth. You don't just walk through fire, you become it. And this shadow figure, this ex, this jealous friend, this toxic co-worker or family member thought they could disturb your balance. What they didn't realize is that you've trained in chaos. You've danced with darkness and came out sacred. They tried to scatter your energy, to fragment your focus, and instead you became more whole, more grounded, more untouchable. And now they watch you with confusion because their tactics don't work anymore. Their access has been revoked, their influence has crumbled. Scorpio, you're not who you used to be. You've rewritten your energetic boundaries. You no longer absorb their projections, you reflect them. They say Scorpio has changed. But what they mean is, I can no longer control them. And here's the wild part, they're not just angry, they're terrified. Because now you see through them. You feel their intention before they speak. You sense their manipulation in the silence between their words. That's the thing about Scorpio. You don't confront with drama, you observe with deadly clarity. And when your silence arrives, it's final. This person is haunted not just by your absence, but by the mirror you left behind. A reflection of everything they tried to be but couldn't, everything they wanted to control but lost. You became their karmic teacher, and they never saw it coming. So now, while you stand in your rising light, they sit in the ruins of their strategy, watching you ascend, realizing they were never your rival, only a lesson. And the chapter they tried to write for you, you burned it and started a new book where they don't exist anymore. Life lesson from part 5, jealousy only survives in shadows. But when you rise into your light, even secret enemies must bow not to you but to the truth. Part 6, the world is finally seeing what the universe always knew. Scorpio, do you remember how many nights you cried silently, not because you were weak, but because you were growing? Do you remember building yourself from nothing, without applause, without support, without anyone noticing the mountain you were climbing in the dark? You didn't complain, you didn't beg for attention, you simply did the work. And now the energy is shifting. Because the world is finally catching up to the truth the universe has always whispered. You were never overlooked, you were simply being prepared. The 6 of Wands is showing up in your field, and that's not a coincidence. This is the card of recognition, of victory, of being seen not just for your outcomes but for your integrity through process. For years, people only saw fragments of your story. They saw the calm surface, but never the inner storm. They saw the glow-up, but never the grief. They saw the empress, but never the ashes she rose from. But now, they're beginning to understand. There's a shift in how people speak your name. There's a shift in how they look at you, ask for your opinion, or even try to mimic your path, because the power you carry now can't be faked. It's not just physical glow. It's energetic authority. Your soul has weight, your silence has gravity, and your presence has become unignorable. Some of the very people who doubted you, discarded you, or whispered behind your back are now circling back, trying to get closer to the light you refused to dim for them. But here's the thing, Scorpio. This recognition, it's not for them, it's not to prove anything, it's for you. It's confirmation that what you built in solitude was never in vain. That every sacrifice, every boundary, every tear was a down payment on the peace you now own. You're not just receiving praise, you're receiving energetic repayment from the universe, from the ancestors who walked before you, from the higher version of yourself that always knew this moment would come. And while others clap, the divine bows. Because it saw you when no one else did. You never needed to scream. You never needed to fight for the spotlight. Because real power doesn't demand attention, it commands respect. And Scorpio, you are being called now not just to shine, but to lead. To be an example of what happens when someone chooses the long road, the quiet path, the soul-first strategy in a world obsessed with shortcuts. You were never late, you were always legendary. And now, it's your season to walk with your head held high, not out of pride, but out of purpose. Let them see, let them remember what they once ignored. Because this version of you is unforgettable, not because of who watched you rise, but because of how you did it when no one was watching. Life lesson from part 6, you don't rise to be seen. You rise because your soul refuses to stay small, and when that light becomes too bright to ignore, let it burn with quiet glory. Part 7, this wasn't just love, it was a soul contract. Scorpio, what if I told you this connection wasn't just emotional, it was spiritual? What if this wasn't just a person you dated or dreamed of, but someone you signed an ancient agreement with, long before either of you had names, timelines, or wounds? Because some people enter our lives for lessons, some for seasons, but a rare few, arrive because they're written in our soul's blueprint. And this wasn't just attraction, this wasn't just timing, this wasn't even just chemistry. This was a contract signed in the astral, sealed in silence, and activated the moment your eyes met. That's why it never truly ended, even after the silence, even after the betrayal, even after you told yourself, I'm done. Because Scorpio, when it's a soul contract, it doesn't obey ego, it obeys divine unfolding. You may have walked away, but something inside you never fully closed, and you hated that. You hated that you could still feel them, still sense their energy, still dream about their name even when your mind swore they were gone. But that wasn't weakness, it was remembrance, because something deep inside your spirit knew this isn't finished. Not in the toxic sense, not in the go back and relive the pain kind of way, but in the way only Scorpio understands, where the connection isn't about comfort, it's about transformation. You didn't come into their life to complete them. You came to ignite them. You came as a storm, one that shattered the false self they were hiding behind. And they weren't ready. Not then. That's why the separation happened. Not as punishment, but as purification. They had to lose you to find themselves, because soul contracts don't just say, we will meet. They say, we will grow, even if it means breaking each other open first. And now the contract is stirring again, you're different. They're awakening, and the universe is watching closely because the next step isn't guaranteed. It's a choice. Will they rise to meet you? Not the old you, not the wounded you, not the forgiving you for everything version, but the sovereign, healed, deeply powerful version. Because now you no longer need them. You've become whole on your own. And that is the only place from which soul love can return, not from dependency, but from readiness. This isn't about going back, it's about asking. Can we start again, this time as our highest selves? And if the answer is no, then so be it. Because Scorpio, this soul contract wasn't designed to keep you stuck. It was designed to wake you up. And whether they return to walk beside you or fade into memory, you've already fulfilled your part, the rest is up to them. Life lesson from part 7, not all soulmates are meant to stay. Some are meant to break us wide open, so the truest version of ourselves can finally breathe. Part 8, when your body feels what your spirit can't say. Scorpio, you're not imagining it, the fatigue, the joint pain, the strange tension that comes out of nowhere, the cold that won't go away. The sudden weight in your chest when you walk into a room or see a certain name flash across your phone. That's not just stress, that's energy. You see, as a Scorpio, your body is more than biology, it's a spiritual antenna. It doesn't just react to weather or food or lack of sleep, it reacts to intention, especially the hidden ones. And lately, there's been someone thinking about you, a lot. Someone who's been hyper-focused on your life, your glow, your silence. They may not speak to you, they may not even be near you, but they're sending energy consciously or unconsciously. And your body is picking it up. You feel it in your bones, don't you? That sense of being drained after seeing their name. That sudden tightness in your throat or solar plexus when a memory of them surfaces. The unexplained headaches, the inflammation, the way your nervous system whispers something's off, even if everything looks fine on the surface. Scorpio, this isn't paranoia, this is sensitivity, and it's a spiritual gift. Your immune system is intelligent. It knows when there's a foreign presence trying to occupy space in your field, even if it comes wearing a smile, even if it's disguised as love. And right now, someone's energy is clinging to you like smoke, not because they hate you, but because they can't detach. They want your light, your attention, your forgiveness, your access, but they haven't earned it. And because they can't reach you emotionally, they're reaching for you energetically. That's why you felt heavy, not just in your body, but in your spirit. Scorpio, this is the price of carrying depth. You don't just read people. You absorb them unless you consciously choose not to. So now, it's time to choose. You're being called to cut cords, to release what isn't yours, to return energies to sender, not with hate but with sovereignty. This may be the moment you finally light that candle. Say that prayer, take that salt bath, speak those words. I release what's not mine, I retrieve what I've given away. My body is not a battlefield for other people's projections. And you'll feel it almost immediately, that pressure lifting, that fog clearing, that inflammation softening, that breath returning. Because the truth is, your body isn't betraying you, it's been begging you to pay attention. Begging you to understand that some of the pain isn't yours, some of the exhaustion isn't natural, and some of the symptoms aren't medical, they're energetic consequences of overexposure to people who haven't done the work to carry your frequency. You're not sick, you're sensitive. And in that sensitivity lies your greatest power. Protect it. Life lesson from part 8. When your body speaks in whispers, listen like your life depends on it. Because your intuition doesn't just speak through dreams, it speaks through your cells. Part 9. You abandoned. You were being initiated. Scorpio, let's talk about the silence. Not just the silence from others, but the silence within. The quiet months, the days when no one checked in, the moments you felt like screaming but didn't because no one would have heard you anyway, the birthdays where the phone barely rang, the accomplishments you couldn't share, the deep inner shifts no one clapped for. It felt like abandonment, didn't it? But it was initiation. Because for Scorpio, the path of transformation never begins in applause. It begins in isolation. Your solitude wasn't punishment, it was preparation. The universe removed the noise so you could finally hear yourself. It stripped the false friendships so you could feel the weight of what was real. It distanced you from distractions so you could confront what was still buried in your bones. And you did, alone in your room, alone on those walks, alone in your thoughts, you broke open. And what spilled out wasn't weakness, it was unprocessed power. You grieved parts of yourself you didn't know you'd been carrying. You held space for a younger version of you, one no one else ever truly saw. And in that sacred solitude, something shifted. You stopped performing, you stopped chasing, you stopped justifying your worth to those who couldn't see your soul. And in that stillness, you came home to yourself. You see, Scorpio, society teaches us that connection is everything. But your spirit knew something deeper, that before you can unite with anyone, you must first unite with your true self. That's why you were pulled away. Not because you were rejected, but because you were being reborn. Every mystic goes through the cave. Every phoenix must burn in darkness before it takes flight. And you, Scorpio, were never meant to live a life of shallow connection. You were built for soul, so of course the universe had to break the surface world around you. It had to quiet the chaos so you could feel your depth again. And now you emerge different, not hardened, but refined, not jaded. But discerning, not empty, but sacred. Because the Scorpio who walks out of isolation is never the same one who entered. You're no longer hungry for validation. You're no longer afraid of being misunderstood. You're no longer tolerating environments that feel like cages. You've tasted your own soul, and there's no going back. So the next time someone tries to define you by your silence, your mystery, your absence, let them. Because you didn't disappear, you descended. And now you rise with a peace they can't touch and a power they'll never fully understand. Life lesson from part 9. Solitude doesn't break a Scorpio. It builds the version of you that no longer begs to be chosen because you've already chosen yourself. Part 10. The ONES who tried to control you now stand powerless. Scorpio, there was a time when they thought they had power over you. They thought your silence meant surrender. They thought your loyalty meant weakness. They thought that just because you didn't fight back, you didn't feel the blow. But what they didn't know was that you were recording everything, in your body, in your soul, in your stillness. Because Scorpio doesn't react to manipulation, Scorpio observes it. And in that observation, you became something terrifying to anyone who once underestimated you. You became awakened. Now they watch you not with control but with confusion, because the version of you they thought they could gaslight, gone. The version of you who gave second chances to empty promises, dead. The version of you who tolerated their subtle cruelty, their weaponized silence, their need to diminish you to feel tall, buried beneath your transformation. Scorpio, let's speak the truth here. Someone thought they could play puppet master. They thought if they twisted just the right string, withheld just enough affection, whispered just enough lies, they could bend your spirit without breaking the illusion of love. But they forgot one thing: you were never their puppet. You were the storm they couldn't read, the current they couldn't map, the truth they couldn't face in themselves. And now they're watching their own power slip through their fingers, not because you destroyed them, but because you outgrew them. They don't know how to reach you anymore. They don't know how to shake your peace. They don't know how to access the parts of you that once felt obligated to hold space for their chaos. Because now, you've cut the cord, energetically, spiritually, psychologically, and they're feeling it. They're feeling the absence of control, the absence of your emotional labor, the absence of someone they once thought they could always return to, but you don't leave doors open for chaos anymore. You build gates with locks, and you only hand out keys to those who have done the soul work to walk beside you, not in front of you, not behind you, and never above you. Now the game is over, and they lost, not because you punished them, but because they played with something sacred and the universe took the wheel. They tried to turn your love into leverage, but your absence became their karma, and the life they now watch you build, that peace, that glow, that strength. It's not revenge, it's redemption. Your redemption. Life lesson from part 10. You don't have to punish the ones who tried to manipulate your light. Simply become so healed, so whole that they can no longer enter your world, even through memory. Part 11. You're rewriting the story, and this time, it's yours. Scorpio, for too long, others tried to write your story for you. They cast you as too intense, too emotional, too quiet, too complicated. They twisted your truth to fit their comfort. They edited your identity to soothe their insecurities. They reduced your depth into something they could control. And for a time, you let them. Not because you didn't know your worth, but because you were still learning how to protect it. You were still discovering that your intensity wasn't a flaw, it was a frequency. And now you've picked up the pen. You're no longer reacting to the versions of you that live in someone else's story. You're no longer explaining your silence, your standards, or your solitude. You're no longer translating your soul into a language people don't respect. Because this chapter, you're writing it in your native tongue truth, and it is raw, it is sacred, it is unedited, and it belongs entirely to you. You're no longer seeking closure from people who ran from accountability. You're no longer performing softness to make others feel safe around your power. You're no longer negotiating with people who don't know how to value mystery, loyalty, and soul. You've reclaimed your narrative, and with it, your energy. Now you're not moving for validation, you're moving in purpose. Now you don't walk into rooms hoping to be liked. You walk in fully aware that your presence is a mirror, and not everyone likes what they see. But that's not your job anymore. Your job now is to own the fire, protect the peace, and embody the truth. And let's be clear, Scorpio, this power isn't about ego, it's about clarity. Clarity that says, I no longer prove myself to people committed to misunderstanding me. I don't water myself down just to be drinkable to the thirsty. I don't shrink so others feel tall. Because now you understand you were never too much. You were just in the wrong chapter, being read by the wrong people. And now that you've stepped out of their pages, you're writing something timeless. A story that doesn't just speak of pain, but of rebirth. A story that doesn't just mention betrayal, but highlights unbreakable boundaries. A story that doesn't revolve around being chosen, because now you choose yourself first. Scorpio, your legacy doesn't begin when others approve. It begins the moment you say, "This is my life," and no one else holds the pen anymore. Life lesson from part 11, they don't get to write your ending. The moment you reclaim your voice, the story becomes sacred. And it becomes yours. Part 12, when two souls return transformed. Scorpio, what happens when two people who were never meant to stay broken finally return whole? What happens when the fire that once burned too bright is now the very light that guides them back to each other? Because something is stirring. A connection that once collapsed under the weight of wounds is quietly rebuilding in the sacred silence of healing. But this isn't a repeat. This isn't the cycle you escaped. This isn't the trauma bond masquerading as love. This isn't the version of them who couldn't show up or the version of you who kept overextending to be seen. No, this is different because this time, you've both changed. And that makes all the difference. Now they no longer come to take but to honor. Now you no longer show up to fix but to be witnessed. Now the energy isn't built on chasing but on choosing. You both walked through your shadows. You both faced your reflections. You both learned the cost of silence, distance, ego, fear, and it shaped you. Scorpio, you were never meant to love halfway. You were born for something deeper, something divine, something rare. But in order to receive that kind of love, you had to first become it. And you have. That's why now, and only now, the universe allows this reconnection. Not as a test, but as a reward. There's a conversation coming. An eye-to-eye moment of truth. A reckoning not with the past, but with who you are now. You won't need to remind them of what they did, they'll already know. You won't have to rehash every wound. The energy will speak louder than words. And in that moment, you'll see it in their eyes. They see you, finally, not the idea of you, not the version they once projected onto your soul, but you, the whole, holy, powerful Scorpio who didn't just survive but transformed. And as they stand before you, trembling with remembrance and reverence, you'll know this isn't about going back, it's about starting again at a higher octave, a deeper level, a soul-aligned chapter, because the love that's coming now, it's not built on potential, it's built on presence, and this time, you're not falling, you're rising together. Life lesson from part 12. When two souls do the work, love doesn't return to repeat the past, it returns to rewrite the future in the language of healing. Conclusion, you break, you became whole. Scorpio, if you've made it here, take a breath, because you didn't just listen to a message. You walked through a mirror that showed you the pain, the growth, the betrayal, the silence, the transformation. And the truth, you were never broken. You were becoming the version of yourself that doesn't seek love from desperation, but attracts it from self-respect. Becoming the soul that doesn't fear solitude, but rises in it. Becoming the energy that no longer bends to manipulation, but walks with divine discernment. And maybe, just maybe, that person, the one who hurt you, the one who ran, was always meant to return, not to complete you, but to reflect who you've become. Because Scorpio, this journey was never about them. It was about you, about choosing yourself, about reclaiming your story, about understanding that the most powerful transformation doesn't come from revenge. It comes from release. You don't need to prove anything anymore, not to them, not to the past, not even to the voice inside you that once whispered you're too much. You're not too much, you're exactly what a world lost in illusion needs. Your depth, your clarity. Your soul, so as this cycle closes and a new one begins, whether it brings love, reconciliation, or simply peace. Remember this, nothing meant for you will ever miss you, and anything that missed you was never ready for your light. Call to action if this message stirred something deep inside you. If you felt sane, understood, or awakened, then don't keep this truth to yourself. Subscribe to the path to Buddhist wisdom. Because Scorpio, your journey is just beginning. And the next chapter will be even deeper, even truer, and even more divine than the last. This is your time, your return, your rebirth, and we're walking it with you every step of the way.